Sustainability and community engagement. We are Nathalie Tübs and I'm an investor, and we are moderating this panel discussion. But we have great panelists, which we'll introduce in a second. But the idea is also to communicate with the wider membership and community here. And as you already can see from the title, we squeezed in a lot of different aspects to this, and it might actually be challenging to address this all in 1.5 hours. But the first thing we actually want to do is introduce IAUC to you. So maybe just hands up, frankly, no offense, who doesn't know what IAUC is here in this room? Is everybody aware of IAUC? If I don't see hands, then I'm going to skip this slide. We save 2 minutes. But, just briefly, it's sort of the organization behind these conferences, not organizing this particular event, that's done by the wonderful chairs and the local committee, but organizing the conference series. And the IAUC is internally organized. We have a board, and here you can find the current board members. And in addition to that, we have committees who take responsibility for particular aspects of community engagement, like the newsletter, long-standing by David Perlmutter. So he's like really the father of all these issues you always get, which is great. And we have an outreach committee, engagement committee, bibliography, and so on. And part of the idea is here to actually inform people on how they can contribute and engage to the association. But also, it's our idea to discuss a bit the shortcoming or maybe potentials we have since we're growing as a community. Of course, these existing structures at some point reach some limits, and in particular, since we're not only growing, but we're also growing in relevance, and we need to gain more impact in various ways, which is impact towards other scientific communities, like over climate change science. But this is also impact towards international organizations and towards IPSL, WMO, and so on. And this is also impact towards local governments, because eventually, if we do great science and nothing of this is implemented, there's not enough help. And part of this is the idea to recruit and engage more people, that we actually can become more effective in respect to these goals. Yeah, it's a long established vital community, and so currently focusing on the research side of things, and we want to discuss how we can further strengthen the ability to respond to a variety of current and future global challenges. And that also involves sustainability aspects. So as we all, I think we really feel happy that we can meet again here face to face as a community. Of course, there's also a large carbon footprint associated to this event. And then part of the future discussion should be how we maybe develop different formats to partly compensate for this. So much as a start. And now Nathalie is going to introduce our panel.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I'll let you introduce yourself. So we have Alvin from Tokyo in Japan, Antonio, Rio in Brazil, and Ariana, who's the president of the board from the ASU in the US, Gerald Mills, who's past president from UCD in Dublin, Ireland, and then Simona, who we all heard from today as well. From École Polytechnique in France. So, yeah, Alvin, did you start introducing yourself?
Okay. Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Alvin. My background is Filipino, and the first experience that I had with IAUC was in Dublin, hosted by Gerald Mills and his team. And that was really memorable for me. I enjoyed the environment. Everyone's very friendly. Yeah. And my background was actually civil engineering. I joined Kanda Sensei's lab in 2009 in Tokyo Tech, and my interest then was hydrology. And in 2011, there was a project, and he said, "You want to change to climate because it feeds the hydrologic model. So since then, and the exposure to IAC, ICUC, I've become very interested in urban climate. But the reason why I mentioned my background is because in my country, the field of urban climate is really not so popular. And because of this, my motivation has always been to develop tools or use models that can be applicable to regions such as the tropics that are not so much focused in the field of urban climate. I guess that's a good way to introduce myself.
Okay, hello everyone. So I'm Antonio from Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. I'm professor at Rio de Janeiro State University. I'm a geographer, and my first experience in ICUC was in New York. That Professor Gonçalo received us there, so in an amazing event. So I start following the association and the conference since there. I work with urban climate. At Lily, I'm working now with vulnerable people to heating and urban island heatings and everything that involves the urban climate is sounds interesting for me because I'm here and it's an amazing opportunity to share and know new colleagues, and to share our research that we developed from Brazil too. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. Ariana.
No.
Oh, it's good. More.
Hi, my name is Ariane Nadal. I'm the current president. I'm faculty at the Arizona State University in the School of Arts and Engineering. And my background is in geodetic engineering and computer science. And I first heard about the urban heat islands somewhere in the early 2010s when I met Tony Brazel at ASU. And he said, hey, there's this really exciting conference going on in Dublin in 2012, you should go. And so it's partially Tony's fault that I'm here today, and then partially your fault because it was an amazing conference. I'm still carrying the 2012 Dublin ICUC bag. And yeah, so this is how I ended up here.
Same for me, actually. I mean, Dublin was also my first.
All of us here. You're the only one who not started in Dublin.
Yeah. My name is Gerald Mills. I'm a geographer. I'm based in UCD, Dublin, and Ireland. So my involvement with this organisation goes back to when it began here in Sydney in 1999, but it was actually borderline between that and 2000. In fact, I think it was 2000 when IUC was officially set up. And I think it was very interesting. It emerged at the time simply because we're meeting, it's been quite a strange history. If you look at ICUC prior to Sydney, there was no IAUC. So there were ICUC events, but there was no IUC. And I think the formation of IUC was critical. And I was very fortunate that to be there at the time it was being formed and they needed volunteers. So that's why I got stuck into it. So I've been doing urban climate since about 1984, largely because the path I took took me to Ohio State and John Arnfield. And I desperately wanted to go to America to learn how to model because I wasn't learning that as a geographer. So that's what John Arnfield taught me. And he was interested in urban climates. So that's why I ended up a bit like the mafia or whatever. You never leave it once you're in the field. So that's my story. And I got increasingly involved in the IUC, and then, as you said, I had the opportunity to actually host the IAUC membership at ICUC in Dublin 2012. And I think it's interesting because that's how I met Natalie, Benjamin, Ariane, herself at the end, Simone. So I'm very, very lucky that my trajectory just coincided with the trajectory of all these
But yes, I'm Simone Kotthaus. I work in France at École Technique at the moment. And as you might have seen, I'm very interested in observing the urban environment. I started working in urban climate 2009. Before, I was doing measurements in Western Africa, very rural areas. And I ended up in this topic by chance because I wanted to do a PhD in London. I didn't know anything about the urban climate or the people that are working there, but I got very lucky because I got to be in the group of Sue Vermont, and she was very involved in the association, of course, we were vital member. And with this, I got to know many interesting people there, and this is how I came here.
Thanks very much for the introductions. So you see we have a lot of people assembled here who can say a lot on the topic. Therefore, we're going to organize it in the following way. So we have 3 rounds of questions for the panel, which they can answer. But then we, of course, would like to open for the audience that everybody of you is also invited to either comment on any of the aspects, but also to ask further questions if you want to know something more particular from the panelists. And the first question, the idea is still 3 seats in the beginning, so don't be shy.
Please come forward. They don't bite.
Yeah. You have a very good view here on our great-looking panel. So the first question, you've already partly addressed how you entered the association or how you first came into contact with it. But maybe you can elaborate a bit more on what does IAUC mean for you. And for this one, I would actually like to ask Gerald to start, and then you can just pass around the microphone. But he indicated that he has been here before the Dublin conference.
Yeah.
There they give the longest view.
Is the microphone mainly just so we can be heard, or is it so you're...
It's also for the recording, but I'm just try to
use
it. I'll keep it short. It means an awful lot to me. It's hard to know when you're starting out doing a PhD. You're always looking for a future, a place where you can actually contribute. And the IUC and its formation was critical to me because at that stage I just returned to Dublin. But like my colleague here, there's not a great deal of support if you're not in a centre for urban research. So it's absolutely vital that you maintain contact with a much wider group of people. So for me, the IUC was basically my lifeline because most careers go through ups and downs, but the one organisation, the one network I go rely on was this network. Now, maybe I'll be biased and misguided, but I think it's a great organisation and it means an awful lot to me personally, and it's helped me come up with ideas that I'm confident I would not have come up with if I was by myself. Tim Oak had a famous statement at 2006. His expression was the ending of the solitudes. I thought it was a very interesting concept. It was that finally there was enough of us working together in different parts of the world that we could actually have a network of shared ideas. So that's what IUC represents to me.
maybe you can just pass to the.
So, as I already mentioned, I was exposed to IAUC in Dublin. But since I started teaching graduate level studies, I have been trying to look into the history of IAUC and how Luke Howard has started it, how the challenges are faced, from how climatologists have to work with social science fields. It was necessary for me to mention that because I belong to a department called Transdisciplinary Science Engineering. It's not a climate group, meteorology group, but a combination of different fields. And I believe that the IAUC is the only group that could represent this transdisciplinary aspect of climate. The idea that we have to consider changes in the cities, not only in the modeling aspect, but also in the applied aspect of climate, is really very important. And I'm happy also that there's a growing impact on the Journal of Urban Climate that is, I believe, initiated or headed by the board and the members of IAUC largely contributed from that. So this is very significant for me, and I believe for all of us. Yeah. So thank you for this.
I continue. So yeah, I think I agree with what has been said. It is a significant organization that makes you feel to be part of something bigger. And I think its main power is that it gives this, yeah, it's a method of how a huge global community can become a small family, basically. So we come together and we exchange ideas across the world and see that, maybe the problems we face are very similar, even though the cities are different and we come from very different backgrounds, but we have to all see how do we model and measure and understand our cities and to relate to the different challenges that happen around the globe, but also to see how can we solve solutions or find solutions together to common problems. I think this is very powerful, and especially as a student, when I joined the conference, it was very good for me to see that there's this big community that is trying to really solve problems together and share ideas. It is really about working together on these challenges and helping each other out. So I had this very supportive feeling in the association that helped me a lot as a student, and also I think it was one part of the reason why I wanted to stay in this field of urban science, because you feel you're part of a bigger challenge.
So for me, the association means opportunity, really, because when I would have the possibility to share the same panel than Professor News. So I really don't know. It's amazing for me. So, and the opportunity for new research career too, because the association opened this space for us early in young researchers to put our ideas to the community, to share our works and job with the international community too, and keep in touch with the best practices that everyone do in their country. So for us, it is so interesting, important too. So and I can put what we do in Latin America, asking for me, for the other colleagues understand. I saw a presentation last one day of the conference about the underrepresentation of the Latin American research about urban climate. But really, I don't think it happened, because we have many things about urban climate been doing in Latin America, in Brazil, for example, but it's so limited because of the language, because of the rate of our opportunities, of our publications. So that means opportunity for me. The association means opportunity for me, I think for another early careers too, the opportunity to show ourselves and put ourselves in networkings and keep in touch with colleagues from everywhere, and building a urban climate community engagement with the sustainability and problems of city, social and environmental problems of the city.
I share Simone's notion. I consider IAUC my academic family, and I've made a lot of friends too in this community. When I attended ICUC 12 in Dublin, I came from a completely different discipline, and I was welcomed with open arms. I was a young researcher, just finished my PhD, had a completely different exposure, or different ways of approaching research topics, and I think that's something that I value in this community, that we all come from different backgrounds, because in the US there is no degree in urban climate. People come from atmospheric sciences, from environmental sciences, engineering. So it's a very wide variety of disciplines that come together to work on one common goal or one bigger problem. And hopefully the young researchers who attend this conference, I saw there are a lot of engagement opportunities for early career researchers, will have the same feeling as I had back in Dublin, that they are welcomed into a community that's very diverse and appreciates diversity and really builds on this diversity to solve the wicked problems of the 21st century.
So we have a second question as well. I mean, so we have the board, right? The IAUC board, and and we're tasked to do several things. We have an engagement committee and an education committee, but we have quite limited resources and a lot of good volunteers. I mean, the session is quite well attended, I think. There's a lot of people interested. So I think, the question is how can the community engagement be improved with the limited resources that we have? And sustainability constraints. So I think Simona, I would like you to answer first.
Yes, it's a very good question. The idea behind the association is really all based on volunteers and people engaging because we hope you share this view on the association that it's something that gives back. So you want to contribute because you also feel you receive something from it. And I think there's many activities of the association that show there's a lot of power. I mean, we have, I don't know how many people in the bibliography committee that always read and report the latest publications in the field. So I think there's a lot of potential which could be extended further. That we have seen very successful webinar series over the COVID time that engaged a lot of people. But all these activities, it's a lot of work that you do on the side in your free time in the evenings. And I hope that maybe with an event like this and also discussing this issue, that we can get more volunteers involved in these committees, because at the moment we have this idea of the committees, but practically there's very few people really contributing and doing these activities. So especially in the aspect of outreach and communicating what is already happening, I think there's a big potential. Maybe we don't have to do everything new, but for example, organizing the webinar series is very nice. We can do this, but if we, for example, would share all the online talks that we're giving anyway that are broadcasted nowadays, if we would have a place on the website or some channel that we could inform each other that this is happening, this would already close this gap a little bit and see that we hear from each other in between the conferences. I think that's the key thing that we need to achieve, that in between this 2 or 3 year cycle of the conference, that we have more exchange between each other.
Oh, yes. Coming from engineering perspective, background, I always try to think about head on. And one of the things that I feel that can be improved is to utilize the advancement in means to communicate with each other. But I wonder how everyone thinks about it, like social network. So I noticed that we've been mainly using the mailing list to communicate, but maybe there's a way to make it more engaging for more people. Yeah, that's one thing that I'm thinking currently. Yeah, like if we can form groups, then those groups must have a way to communicate among each other better.
Something like a Slack or I don't
Yeah,
know how to say that.
Currently, there's that platform like Slack or Discord or Teams. Yeah, sorry for being too specific.
Just a very short comment on this. So that's absolutely true. And actually, we would have hoped that we have some of this infrastructure already in place for the conference, since we're currently revising the website. As you've seen, may have seen here, also some of these things are outdated, and that is due to we're currently under a transfer, but we didn't manage to complete it till the conferences. And then part of this will be that we have a more sophisticated mailing system, which would allow also to have more subgroups, which would still mean that email would be the primary communication channel, but you could have like more differentiated target groups and interests in there. So that's under planning. Unfortunately, it's not finished or not available yet. But still, certainly beyond that, it could also be different channels which are more intuitive to some of the people.
Well, I'm very optimistic. Yeah. I feel that direction.
Ariana, do you want maybe want to say?
Yeah, I would like to bounce this question back to the audience actually,
Yeah.
because we had a board meeting on Sunday and we discussed all these great ideas of things that we can improve and how we can streamline the organization and what we could do, but we just simply don't have the manpower. And so we cannot have 200 people on the board, obviously, but the question is how can we maybe form some sort of committees that are connected to the board that can take on some of the volunteering activities and contribute to the organization so that we can achieve more faster because we're really limited in terms of manpower. And I wonder if anybody in the audience here has an idea of how to accomplish this.
Yeah. Anyone in the audience?
Any volunteers?
Yeah, so maybe I could just say who would like to be more involved in IAUC. Raise hands.
Oh, yes.
So
have
yes, please. So we have a survey, right, at the end of the at the end of the presentation. Yes. Okay.
Just a quick comment. Do people still think that the extensive bibliography is still required in all newsletters? Because I imagine that is taking up a lot of volunteers' time. That's just a question.
As a member of that committee, actually they speak a little bit to that. I think it might take a lot of time for the chair of that committee because they're the ones managing all of the rest of us, and we can sometimes be a bit like very smart, intelligent cats that he's trying to herd. But for us as individuals, we sort of have our routines. It takes me maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours every quarter, so I might be spending 10 hours a year on that committee. I think another area that we might consider as a community is also as one of the conference early career researcher committee members is that we might consider elevating that to be sort of a subsidiary committee within the IAUC as a whole to take on some of that professional development stuff that we're doing here at this conference, but could continue in the intervening years between conferences. Yeah, absolutely. So the Early Career Researcher Committee, we are working to sort of support the early career researchers, which I realize today we never actually give a good definition for. But we, in early career, we're considering anyone who is a student, a postdoc, and within probably like 2 to 3 years of being an assistant professor type of role. But we're kind of loose in like where you end on the early career research. But yeah, so those are sort of who we're trying to cater to. We held a data visualization workshop on Sunday to sort of discuss what are some best practices for data visualization for both publication, but also trying to communicate to the general public. Maybe it's for a news agency that you have a nice graphic and you're trying to make it better for the community to understand. So those are some of the things we talked about there, as well as introducing some basic code for those that aren't familiar with coding. This evening, we're having a social networking event for ECRs to get to know each other. And maybe there's opportunities to connect postdocs to mentor graduate students. Maybe it's a new assistant professor who's looking for PhD students. It's a great space for them to connect and get to know one another. And then we're also hosting a panel discussion on Friday to talk about professional development issues like work-life balance and how do you navigate the ever-changing field of job applications and such. And so there are several people who are going to be on that, including Simone, who's going to be a great panelist and is definitely getting probably overloaded in terms of panels, but we appreciate that. So so it's just a few things that we're doing, and we're also interested in sort of finding somebody to pick it up after we finish this year.
Hi. I'd like to pick up on a couple of threads that were sort of proposed here. I'm trying to bring them together in a way that makes sense. Simone, I think you mentioned the webinars, and there's talk about outreach to people who are outside the community or young. And I think a platform that might be suitable is something similar to the TED, or rather the TEDx talks, which are short. Thank you. That's all right. Which are short, I mean, no more than 15 minutes, preferably about 12. They're designed for the general audience, so you don't have to be a real expert to dig deep into it. And they can be arranged at perhaps regional meetings or country meetings, so we don't have to fly all the way to Sydney to connect to someone we want to meet with. And obviously easier for the Europeans and North Americans. Perhaps South America might be able to arrange, that's a bit more complicated. But to produce a series of these TEDx talks, which would be teaching material, which could be a means of communicating amongst us, but also an effective means of outreach. Now, I realize you need to have the appropriate studio or studios, you need to have the photographic, the camera equipment, but I think in this day and age, it shouldn't be beyond what we can produce. So that's just throwing an idea out there. And I'm not volunteering too long on these things.
You're already on the short list.
Anyone else?
I've actually been thinking about this. I'll just say it here. Maybe if we could have regional subcommittee.
Yes.
Because like what you were talking about, like there's been talk that there are less of South American, because it would be nice to have, let's say, IAUC South America subcommittee to help bring people from Argentina, Uruguay together to be able, and also in Africa. But I know Europe, that wouldn't be an issue because Europe is basically IAUC, I think.
Yes,
We have 50% of the participants here are from Europe.
yes, less 10% from Latin America and Africa. So that is the challenge of our association for engagement people, because we need to think, first of all, you need to do a census to know how bigger you are and how diverse you are in our association. It's the first step, because why the people from Latin America and Africa don't come to the conference, for example? They aren't in the association, or it's because some problem associated to travel to Australia, for example. So after that, we need to think in regional representatives or local committees, regional committees to bring this representative to our association. So thinking in the structure of association, they put regional will represent our association, our association to bring people for our conference, to bring people for our association, and put that people, the ideas of that people, the riches of that people. So that I think is so important too.
I totally agree. That's an excellent idea. And if you fill in the feedback form afterwards, you will find that we deliberately offer this option, because that's also a way forward. We've been discussing internally in the board for quite a while that we need regional activities, we need regional events, but to organize them, that must be bottom-up activity, and then we need groups to form beforehand. So that would be great if you volunteer to be maybe nuclei for an African or a South American or an Asian Pacific committee.
So thank you. I'm Flora from Hungary, and I was really happy when I heard about this panel discussion, because this is my third conference, ICUC conference, and when I first participated, it was like a whole new world would open for me as a very, very young student. And I worked nearly 8 years in a similar field for the Association of Urban Planners in Hungary, so I know how very, very, very difficult it is to engage people on a voluntary basis. And I know that now we have a lot of ideas. We give you a lot of ideas without any cost. And then it's the board's difficulty to give this impetus going. And what I found that it is a good driving force, because we are now here more than 600 people. Whomever you know, like you have talked, it's I think maximum 50. But if you have a smaller group, either based on topic, which is very nice, or you have a smaller regional group who know each other and they can work like a subdivision of the organization. It grows the activity, it multiplies the activity, and it could also multiply the engagement as well. And small working groups, to have small working groups and to have like, yeah, very, very simple tasks to perform, I think the most easy way to engage. And on the other hand, I think a great barrier of engagement is that, well, I think I am a member now like 7-8 years of IAUC, but I had absolutely no idea what the board is doing. So I know there is a board. I know maybe some of the people who are on the board because I read the newsletter. But apart from that, I couldn't even imagine on what basis this organization works. So yeah, it's. I think it would make it easier if we could, like, you know, when you have you are cooking I don't know, a huge amount of food, and you have the task of peeling the potatoes, and you can say we are trying to get volunteers to peel the potatoes, and that is very easy, simple. Everybody will understand, and I understand the task. I can peel potatoes. Here am I. So yeah.
So small committees with a simple goal. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to try to add to the discuss around the community engagement within the, for example, or recruitment of communities within the African society and continent in general. So actually, in my opinion, I think it boils down to how we advance the discipline in this continent and maybe some other areas in the global south. Because for me, my personal experience as a discipline, like a sub-discipline, urban climatology actually came to be in Nigeria, where I originated from, in around 2008. And if you look at it, the discipline has actually been advanced. Of course, I studied, like I did a module, boundary layer metrology. That's what we know. We have studies from the Department of Geography, okay, but people really don't kind of understand that this discipline has been advanced, so it's more like a general kind of climatology. So I would think that if we want to actually engage people, we need to also look at it from the direction of how we advance the discipline so that for curriculum development, try to create a framework whereby we can encourage the integration of urban climate into modules. Because now in my university where I finished from, because of the engagement of our senior colleagues, we now have a module called urban climate and metrology, which started like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So, and that would probably be the only module you will find in the sub-Saharan African university. So I believe that this might be the way to go to kind of pull up the community in this geographical region.
Before we continue with further comments and questions, as we are so successful and the room is getting full, I suggest that now we switch on the ventilation. There's a trade-off. It's quite loud and annoying, but in particular now after the
pandemic, we are all increasingly concerned about indoor air quality, and many of you are experts in that anyway. So I guess we take this now, since we are so many nicely, you just can keep discussing and speak a bit louder.
We haven't heard from Gerald yet.
And we do have a lot of open seats here.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
guys in the back. There are still some seats available. You can come up front. Or no.
Oh,
Thanks.
Quick intervention to follow up on the excellent discussions been said so far. Two things. The original question about the usefulness of the bibliography. When my colleagues in the IPCC urban chapters were looking for material, it was very useful. So Peter, thank you for that work. A little bit of advice. So Peter was my old postdoc. Machine learning techniques next time can add value. So that's one way to make a step forward for the bibliography. Second thing. So in my previous role and in my current role as a co-chair of Institut, I speak to a lot of different urban organizations. So when broadly speak to the community, one thing that I've always struggled, no names being mentioned, but some practitioner communities, some decision-making communities, some advocacy communities, they are treading on ground that the IAUC have done tremendous amount of work over the past 20 years. So they are just repeating the same thing that we've done. And what I felt is that our community can do a better job in trying to reach out to these other communities, leverage this network so that we become more effective in communicating how strong a community we are, and then contribute to the broader global climate change discourse. So in my role, I can't sit on the board, conflict of interest, but I will be interested to know if there are people in the current or future board, or maybe volunteers, ECRs, who would like to work with me over the next 5 to 7 years in this assessment cycle to gather, to communicate with the broader urban community, the urban climate community, and see where this leads forward. So maybe that's the next evolutionary step of the IAUC.
Joe, do you want to comment on the second question?
Well, I've actually somewhat forgotten what the second question was.
Perfectly handing over to the next one. So this one is how the community engagement can be improved with the resources we have and the sustainability constraints. Yeah, you can comment on
I
what.
would agree. I think the problem for volunteers is they want to know what they're volunteering for. So we need to have a clear structure as to what we need volunteers to do. I think there's a role for sort of standing committees, things that are always going to be there, and a role for things that are short-lived. Then we have an obvious cycle, which is the ICUC cycle, to make a determination about whether some committee should be pruned and move on. So I think we should identify ourselves as what are the key things we want this IEC to succeed in. One of them obviously is, and we've been going on in about 3 years, is making interactions with the design planning communities themselves. And the other is obviously the climate change community, because a lot of the stuff that they do with regard to urban is top down, and we argue for much more engagement from the bottom up. Sorry. No, that. Then the other question I think is the one about membership. See, technically, we don't really have membership. What we have are people who attend the conference, and then we have a list. So it's not like someone says, I'm a member, because we don't actually have a membership things. So I'm not sure. So that means when we do the analysis of membership, it's largely based on who's attending the ICUC meetings. So a different strategy is to figure out who's actually maybe pulling down the newsletter to find out just how big the community is that we're actually sending out information to. And then I think it would be worth looking at how broad our engagement is. And then I think the challenge for us is to figure out how to expand. If we actually believe in our field and potential for the IAUC, is to expand that. I think Africa and South America are big blank spots in terms of our engagements, and I think that's a clear strategy that we should focus on. So there's a task that we look for volunteers to try to achieve that through the regional meetings or whatever. That's a clear goal. That means we could actually, I've been brutalized by the university system, But there's always targets and goals, but at least that we can assess whether we're accomplishing them.
Thanks very much. And the discussion is nicely evolving towards the last question already, which is what is needed to increase our impact on the transformation of cities. And this is meant in several aspects. So that, this can be via other scientific communities, as Vincent highlighted, in particular the IPCC, who in the special report, who on the mid one will have a tremendous impact on what governments are going to do, and both national governments but also local governments. But then also there could be a different track, which is a more direct consultancy of local governments also at an earlier stage, because I think type of information is needed also already much earlier. And I think the idea of the TED Talks is great. So we need to develop new formats which are not like our natural communication language. So we write scientific papers, but that doesn't do the job, because if you hand that over to a politician and say, again, I don't get the message. So we need to do some of the translation work either ourselves, or we need to identify people who can do the translation work for us, I think. And therefore, maybe do you want to comment on the last question? Or we don't want to limit the discussion on the community engagement. So we have several aspects, but I just wanted to open the floor also for the last one, because the discussion is evolving in this direction already anyway. So we have a last round here on the panel. So maybe you start.
Yes, sure. Really, there is a question so important for us from Brazil, because we have now, for the last 4 years, so difficult moments for science. It means that what happened to in Brazil, not only in Brazil, in the world, scientists have problem in the world, really. We be questionnaire about what we doing and about what you doing in science. So I think this is a need for our association and researchers to bring civil society organizations to discuss with us. We have to do an association not only with scientists more, but we need to bring another actors to us, to talk with us, to understand what we are doing, and to give opportunity to that people that aren't scientists to talking about the problem. Because human problems are a problem from the citizens, for the people. So how can you bring these people to our discussion by the society civil organization or by the decision makers? So how bring it people? That people must be here with us to understand what we're doing, and we teach, we discuss with him or them how to apply it in the daily routine of the cities. So I think it's so important. Bring the ordinary people to talk with us, and bring decision makers to talk with us and share it, really, not teaching someone, but share the knowledge about the kind of organization or the kind of problem they suffering every single day. So.
That's a tough problem to tackle. I think that there are fragmented efforts everywhere to take the science and translate it into something usable, but it's really up to the individual researcher or researcher. So we do a lot of outreach at ASU. We have a media team that helps us communicate messages. We work a lot with municipalities, but it is ASU, and it would be me or my colleagues. It's not under the umbrella of IAUC. So I wonder how this could be, how all of the fragmented efforts could be harvested and put together into a larger message that then could be transmitted through the IAUC, so that it comes from the organization as a unified message, as opposed to these fragmented efforts that I'm sure exist in many, many places. And I don't have an answer to that. So, oh, Matt has an answer.
No, I don't have an answer, but I just want to highlight what you said now, because I think it's important. This community has an opportunity, and maybe it's necessary. I'll use the example. So, maybe, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to relay some of our conversation this morning, but it's not like Alberto Martilli and Scott Krenhoff and Megan published a paper in 2020 about the misuse of the term urban heat island for adaptation. Many of us have been talking about that for many years. A few years before that paper, Evie went and presented on that same topic, and unfortunately nobody picked up on it. And there's an opportunity here for unified messaging. If you have been, and you've all been around all the talks this week, how many times have we used the term urban heat island in an adaptation context? Right? So if we don't get our message corrected on our part, how can we hope that it's corrected outside of our immediate environment? And I would urge us to think about what it is that we want to communicate before we reach out to those, to invite them to the table and perhaps even confuse them more. Right? Decision makers don't want to come to the table so that they can hear about uncertainty. They don't, because they have a, if you were at Winston's talk, one of the questions that he was asked is, why aren't societies acting on the science that we have now? And his response was very good. We have many of the solutions. We've had them for a long time, for decades. They're not unified. They're not strategic. They're not being applied, and they're not being coordinated. And it's inherent on this community to start coordinating now. I would start by thinking about a unified message about the use of the urban heat island term, which has been very efficacious for many decades. But it's been misused. Misused in municipalities, misused in the media. For example, Los Angeles, if you look at their climate action plan, their goal is to decrease the urban heat island by 5 degrees something, some unit that has yet to be defined, right? Probably not the best use of communication. So I would urge us as a community, right, to develop perhaps a set of standards that we can all stand behind and move forward in that regard. Yeah. So very acute, very sharp, very focused messaging. And some of the basic concepts that define our field is a useful starting point.
Yeah, Mark makes a good point, but I still think we need to have a much clearer idea about what we want the organisation to achieve. For example, taking on the urban heat island at the moment, I don't think would be. First of all, we'd end up with endless debates amongst ourselves. I agree with Matt about identifying things that we can actually contribute and make a statement. I think there's an opportune time simply because, like never before, as far as I'm concerned, urban is going to be at the heart of the discussion about climate change. It's going to come down to mitigation, adaptation, etc., etc. And I think that this is our opportunity to make statements, maybe in commentaries or whatever, and to pull out.
Get closer to your mouth.
Seriously, do you mind? Like, so I do think it's possible for us to actually make statements that will contribute to the discussion along the lines that Winston may have identified. And it doesn't mean that we have to have complete agreement, but we can make statements. But again, that's a decision that the board needs to make, that this is a goal, because we want to promote us. Maybe they should want the microphone.
Ooh, I don't know.
Can you hear me? Oh.
The ventilation is so loud in the back.
It's loud in my ear.
But there are lots of seats here in the front.
Yeah, maybe we just take the chance that you would come here.
So, yeah, I would think that as a community, IAUC can come up with a protocol where we do have some set of standards where there is certain degree of consensus which helps in transformation of cities, and a set of protocols, and that is communicated through citizen science. So I think citizen science is a very, very strong medium, but it's not being percolated so well, especially in the Southeast Asian countries and developing countries. So I think that's where, if you can provide some kind of a white paper or some document to various levels of governments, and then also
sort of implement, try to at least provide a mechanism to implement for citizen science. I think IAUC can really make an
I'd like to refer to the term transformation of cities, because we sort of assume that there's a transformation or the transformation of cities, where in fact every city or most cities around the world, if they are transforming at all, are transforming because of different forces acting upon them. Some will be transforming because they need to increase the building stock because the population is growing through internal migration or through natural growth or whatever. Some will be renovating old building stock. Some will be downsizing, like some of the old industrial cities. In some cases, the transformation will be driven by climate change activists who are interested in combating greenhouse gas emissions and planting trees. Others will be thinking of walkability, and it all depends on the context and the existing structure. And I think to be effective in each city, you have to become a politician to understand what is driving the forces of transformation, and will be different in different locations, and to be able to communicate to the decision makers, who may be developers, who may be local planners, who may be the government, at whatever level, depending on how centralized the country is, and be able to identify what it is that they're interested in, and being able to influence at that particular point where the relevant decisions are made, which are local in context. I mean, I agree we have overall global interests and inputs, but it has to be local in terms of implementation.
Yeah, in addition to what he said, I would say that we all understand what is happening, but at local level, a low community person does not understand that the temperature was lower last year and he's experiencing a little warmer this year, and how, so we need to communicate in simple language. So climate communication has to be without scientific jargons, in simple language, communicated to lower communities and to politicians who will be ultimately taking decisions on building science. So I think that is needed. And through IAUC, we have newsletters, we have communication. So even if we communicate through small success stories, how they implemented in their local area and which can be implemented and adopted in locally, that would help.
Maybe we continue on the panel for the last question.
No,
Gerald, were you done? Or?
Okay.
I'll be next, maybe, and then Simone.
I was really impressed this morning by Simone's talk. A lot of it, and also in this part when she presented her paper, and then she said, if it's too much for anyone, please watch this YouTube video. It got my attention because I go back to Southeast Asian condition. Urban climate is not a topic of discussion in society. So before I joined the lab, I wasn't really sure the significance of urban climate in 2008. But it was just thanks to joining this conference that I was able to learn the significance of it. Yeah, but so the point about the 10 times is really good. If we can make something that is oftentimes used by the people who are not belonging or not globally interested yet in this IAUC or urban climate, then that will be a big help. What do you think about this? Like, if where I come from, if you are able to share some TikTok videos, or these concepts, yeah, then it will be a trigger, like a seed that we don't expect it to be effective next year, but maybe in the 5 years, 10 years time.
Yes, I support the TikTok committee. I think let's have the comments from the audience.
Yeah, jumping on that, I think indeed the community should work towards some more public engagement and thinking about the tools that are available for doing that. I think presenting the things in layman's terms is a good idea, but actually you can explain complex things to a very an audience that is not familiar at all with the topic. We recently did that in London through a walk that used photography to talk about radiation and like the imperceivable radiations that are basically contributing to the heating of the cities and the cities in London, and so the infrared radiation in particular and so on. And at the end of the day, the whole audience, which was not composed at all of like a scientific background, they all came from arts and humanities. They all understood the simple concepts of the surface energy balance. And I think they all left this walk thinking about what was surrounding them, and then basically you are empowering the people to engage into discussions with their local communities about all this topic. So I think this is something that is currently missing in IAUC. It's a whole work around public engagement using other tools than just white papers and policy engagement and so on, and really talking directly to the people. That's it. It's more of a comment. It's not really a question.
When you're speaking about the impact of this organization, I think I would like to add on the whole of this, lot of brainstorming ideas that are being happening up in these 3 days we're looking forward. I think whatever urban climate we are talking about, it's ultimately going to be impacting the health and well-being, and it can be an important sector to jump into and be part of the transformation of the health sector. So that can be a part of, because I belong to a healthcare background, I think I came along to look forward to most of the how as a better healthcare I can look forward to global health policies, and the environmental health policies. So it was a very much intersectoral learning for me. So it might be a bit, because some of the ends we are really clueless why it's impacting this end. So a lot of answers you have, a lot of answers some people need can have to just thank you.
Many thanks for all the comments. All speakers, can you just quickly introduce yourself? Just say your name and or your organization.
I'm one of World Meteorological Organization.
Thanks.
I just would like to touch with other aspects of the problem, how to increase our impact on transformation of cities and make it more efficient for cities. Many research organizations doing some research projects for developing countries. And the project is, when project is ended, legacy is almost nothing. Scientific paper, and that's all. So what I suggest, when you initiate some research study, first of all, build clear connection with city administration or with national organization in that country. In this case, it will be much more efficient results of your research activity, not only for your papers, but for cities and for countries. Once I was evaluator of one of project, will not say about what country, and they realized excellent project. They made a very nice observation system and mast, etc. Then finalize the measurement campaign. They pack all instruments and send to home country. And it is very typical situation. If we will do such a way, we will never happen successfully for that country. So this is, I think, very, very important strategy for. We already discussed on the boards about how to make more spread activities of the association And my suggestion was I already talked to colleagues. What would be good to build regional nodes for different continents and to try to use their activities and help them. In this case, it will be much better represented by different countries, especially for global south. Thank you.
Yes, Jason Chase. IAUC did us a great favor. It listened to us, Gerald and I actually presented a proof of concept about how we can get a database that's going to be worldwide and that can be used to run models. And models, in my mind anyway, can be used as tools in so many different ways. And my suggestion here is that we now, after 10 years of this, our science in the modeling science arena, making tools that can be offered to, say, COP, the Committee of, I can't remember what the mayors. The mayor, that's it. Yes. They are the ones who are going to make things happen. They can probably have funds that can be used if they're told that there is some ability to put science into the models and that they can trust it. So that would be a group that you could, IAUC, being the science behind a lot of what we know about climate and so forth. They might listen to having science-based, being informed by science-based tools, whether it be observations or models. So maybe this is something, given your need to extend out to people who are make a difference in the world, and those are the mayors. So, anyways, that's it.
David Malesio from New York. Yeah, I think I have a comment, and I'm wondering kind of how close are we from being able to tie the work that we do to, dollars and damages that people could experience, maybe that people could also avoid. In my particular, for my PhD, I studied urban boundary layers. Now I'm working in private industry at a nonprofit. I'm not speaking as a representative; these are opinions are my own. But one of the things that we're trying to communicate climate risk as is one of the biggest investments that anyone's going to make is on a house, for example. And so, what is the expected change for the next 30 years based on the best available science? And how do we tie that to, does that affect whether, if I look at a house here, should I, but you see that it's going to flood tomorrow, right? Based on the score because, where it is in the terrain. Being in this context where I am now, where we're trying to kind of streamline that information, I'm just wondering how close we are from being able to kind of put the pieces together to go from the advanced science to kind of how we spend our dollars on, important investments. I'm kind of I feel now lucky to be at that place because I feel like my work has that impact. But I always wonder kind of, outside of my context where is that highway, of that information? How can we improve that? Because and in my context, one of the ways that it's been done is that a lot of the communication is being done by people who aren't scientists. And so it's like internally, I work more on the research and development, but I think the beauty of being able to produce these visuals and talk with people who are used to talking with people about how people receive information. I guess I'm a pessimist. I don't know that scientists are going to be able to best figure that out. And so I'm wondering, in terms of what communication tools we can lean on or what communities we can lean on is kind of where I have a common question. I don't have an answer, but yeah, tying it to and empowering people at the local context is where my thoughts are.
I'm Joseph, Arizona State University. Now that we're talking about transformation, can we think about also about transforming the structure of our conferences? I recently attended a conference, and one of the things that was unique to me and I found it to be helpful is the capacity to self-interrogate during the sessions. And one of the things that they do is, after the presenters have completed their presentation, they form a panel with what we have here. And then we dedicate about 40 to 1 hour of to have an exchange between the presenters and the audience. And I found it to be very helpful because it provides an opportunity for constructive feedback, to engage and interact. I don't know whether that's something that could be adopted for the ICUC.
Just briefly bend the discussion a bit. I mean, we have a lot of really interesting comments and great ideas. We just want to come back a bit to IAUC, because we also have very limited capacity of what we can actually do. I mean, you have seen what is IAUC. That's the board, which consists of 14 volunteers who all have full-time jobs elsewhere, or more than full-time jobs. And we have a couple of committees who are volunteering to take over a particular task. And therefore, we really we won't be able to inform all local governments on the world ourselves. So we really need to focus our activity on where it can have most impact, probably. And maybe we can try to consider this bit in the ongoing discussion.
Yeah, can I maybe give a comment on this quickly?
Yeah, sure. You're still
because I had the impression that there are so many good ideas, and also people are trying to communicate their science and they're connecting to their governments and so on. Maybe this is one thing that IAUC can do, is try to have some kind of platform, or in the newsletter every time we have one success story where someone actually managed to communicate their science properly, and that can inspire others to maybe find a similar pathway. So we are, as an association, we're not going to do this communication and find it, but we could maybe be the hub to share where we have success stories. Sorry, maybe.
So I want to just quickly address the question about what can we do in ICUC conference, because I think that's directly relevant to IAUC. From the way that it's set up right now, ICUC conferences are meant for a hub for us to come together and exchange our knowledge and share what it is, the research that we're doing. Because of that, we're often focusing on volume, bringing as many people as much as possible together and giving them the opportunity to share and just be in the same room with other people and do what we're doing right now. And when you focus that and put that as a priority, then there are less options for instance, what was proposed by Joseph, which is, having more extended discussions and getting into depth. However, as we're coming together, there are opportunities for trainings, which is what we did on Sunday in the visualization workshop that we did. We tried to focus on what we thought, and I can see it's echoed as part of this group as well, which is communicating our work to a broader audience. And one of those ways is through effective visualization, and we tried to do that. So one of the things that I think we can do moving forward is to get better understanding of what the community needs to have those trainings as part of ICUC or beyond that at training school, to be more directly focused on that. Because I agree with you, I don't think as an organization we can actually do all of those things ourselves, but we might be able to provide training to our community to then go out and do it themselves.
Steve Luke, University of Melbourne. So I'm a newbie to IAUC, but I was thinking about what Matt Georgescu said at the start of the conference with regards to a coordinated approach to research and communications. And in a UN framework, be it urban greening, urban water, or child health, they will frequently come up with a charter, so it's Sydney Charter. And it is very high level, but it provides a structure that everybody in the coming 5 years can work towards from a research perspective or an engagement perspective or outreach perspective to try and look at the goals that are set in the Charter and the actions to achieve those goals and dedicate the research towards them. By doing that, you control the narrative that is put out to the community of decision makers and in other government forums. You control the terms and you control the goals. In the same way that Sustainable Development Goals have done that, but not in a final resolution for us on urban climate. That's just a suggestion. Why can't the IAUC come up with something like that, a city charter, and every 5 years it's refreshed, or however often the conference comes?
Take one more year. We need to get shorter with a statement that we can wrap up from the panel.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Zach Mental. I'm from ASU, and this is my first ICUC, so sorry in advance for my pontification. I'm new to IAUC. But from my perspective, I think the ICUC provides a lot of public value to the city that's the host city. And so I think an example of something that could be done is like an open house in which you invite community members and politicians. And I think the benefits are twofold. Not only do you elevate IAUC as an organization, but I think then we would also get practice as scientists communicating with the public. So you have that feedback immediately to the scientists of what works, what doesn't work, how do I brainstorm how to communicate my science better. So I understand that the immediate effects would be hyper-local, but I think in the long term, it would be beneficial to people to get that actual practice face time with the community as well.
All right. Yeah. Jorge Gonzalez from
So just take a very quick answer on this initiative.
I think what you're mentioning is definitely, in terms of the idea, is great, but in practice, we really tried to do that. However, if we continue doing ICUC the way we're doing, which is very much focused on sharing the science, there's very little incentives for engaging those who don't speak the same language as we do. So in the events that you saw yesterday, like we managed to get like 3 people coming from different sectors of like the government or policy. And even that was quite a hassle. So I'm just saying this not to say that this is not good, but to say that if we really have different priorities about ICUC, then we need to also think about how the format of the conference might need to be changed to accommodate that.
All right, so finally, okay. I'm Jorge Gonzalez from New York, SUNY Albany now. And the question and also the IUC specifically, I think it's a little bit more that we could do, but I think the strength is in our informed voice about this meeting. It's about having those deep discussion on topics and subjects, and perhaps if we can be a little bit more targeted on some of those emerging topics, the community look up to our expert voice, and I think we can build that conversation towards our main event over the years before, through notes or through regional discussion or something, and bring those. And there are a number of topics, of course. Our world is our city changing very rapidly. With decarbonization issues, even coming here, I got a call from the news media about commenting on cities and wildfires. There's huge amount of topics that we can target some of those topics and have our voice in a unified way expressed. So one thing I like to see us doing in the future is to come with a few statements that are being building prior to coming in. We agree on that conversation, and this cannot go into the organizer. They have to come from the community, perhaps some small, committees, that we, meet once a month or so, and in 2-3 years we come to agreements. We can review the science before making those statements, and I think the cities will look up to those informed, scientific, statements, and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 every 2 years. I think that's not a lot to do, and I think that will probably reflect a larger impact to what we can do. We cannot train the world, but we can give our expert opinion in a unified way to the rest of the world.
Thank you very much. So I know there's a lot of interest of discussing more, which I actually totally appreciate. So I'm delighted that there's so much community engagement here. but we have to wrap up a bit. And maybe I sneak in with a final comment myself. I know it's not quite fair anymore, right? That follows me on language. Now I'm just leaving on the USI thing, because we have actually talked a lot about communication. And I think it's way more difficult than we may think to actually deliver the message in the language the other side may understand. And that actually also may not be entirely our task, because that's not what we specialized in. So we're still the scientists, and I think what we actually need to do first is get the message right. So, and that's like the statements, really simple messages, condensing knowledge, and then we can think of all these different channels and outreach and activities. But probably you should keep in mind that we are not professional in this. So if I make a TikTok video, that will have exactly no impact, and also nobody will ever see it. So I'm not as so don't want to get it viral. We need other professionals for this. And for the language, and that hands a bit over to the Friday session. With the IPCC, I think we as a community getting the messages right is also we really need to think how we can best contribute to the IPCC process, in particular to the special report. We will hear this in Friday in much more detail, but I think we can prioritize key research papers we need. And then there's an important intermediate step, which is aggregation of knowledge, because in the IPCC process, actually the authors don't manage to read all publications because there's so much out there. So we now need to identify like key topics where we need aggregation, which means new reviews, new meta studies, and that's something we can actually pretty well do as a community, that we identify these areas where they, okay, the 2003 review may not be quite up to date. That we need to take the chance in this part of the process to actually to aggregate this and feed it into, and then of course we can all become authors and editors, which we will hear in more detail. So I know there's a need for a lot more discussion, but we're running out of time, because I really would like to give the panel the chance to wrap it up from their perspective now, after hearing this tremendous input from the community. And at the same time, we do have the feedback form already, but unfortunately the barcode isn't working. And I've tested it beforehand, but that's Murphy's Law. And when we realized that it's not working, my student who actually created it was still sleeping, because it's in Germany in a different time zone. So I'm afraid you will have to work with this short URL here. So if you can just type this in, you will find the feedback form. If you don't want to do it now, you will also find it on the poster, and we will send it after the conference to the members.
You have to open the link. That's
that's right. We have to send it to the poster. Okay. And now I would give the chance to the panel to wrap up on the discussion, and your first, please. Who wants to go first?
Yes, I'm very happy to see all these contributions here, and I think there's is what we wanted to achieve with this, to open the discussion, to make the community aware that we're trying to, better communicate what the board is doing, but also make you aware that there's a lot of room for engagement, that we have these committees and we need to form new committees, and we have to have a structure, and we will work on this structure. And the more people that actively contribute, the better we can have our impact. So with these committees, we can then identify how do we best outreach, how do we best share our knowledge, and all these aspects that were discussed. And I would like to also highlight that maybe we should be open to TikTok. I don't know. We should be open to new ways that we can communicate. And I think this young scientist, early career scientist board committee could be a good way forward to have fresh ideas incorporated into the way we function as a community, because maybe it's not only to communicate with the policymakers or with the outside world, but maybe it's also a way to engage our community, so the young scientists to share their PhD in a video or whatever. I wouldn't say only because we're too old for TikTok. Maybe other people can do it better. And I think you don't have to be professional to reach people there. So that we should be open to new ways that we can do things. And if you have ideas, go to the form and put them in. You can also submit a video if you want.
Well, first of all, we should start thinking about the achievements. And I think the IOC is a remarkable achievement because it has no income. I mean, it has no income. The membership is completely open. It's possible to volunteer and actually get stuck in. I think the issues IOC faces for the next step is to be quite strategic in terms of what tasks I take on, given the limited number of people involved and the amount of time they can commit. I think we're in a blessed opportunity at the moment that's been given to us by climate change, where cities are at the centre of it, for us to actually have a target audience, because I would say up to certainly the mid-2000s, we were simply an irrelevancy. We found our work interesting, but it wasn't like we were going to actually change it. We just had to deal with communication issues to get our stuff into the audience. But now I think we have a ready audience because cities are making commitments to say zero carbon or whatever else. And that's going to have implications. That means they're going to start making changes and we need to have information to make those changes. So I don't think we can take on the burden ourselves, and our job should be to identify the committees to meet the challenges we face right now and to be quite strategic with our alliances to make sure that comes back. There are many, many organizations talking about this, the C40, ICUC, Covenant of Mayors. They're quite capable of taking information and using it, but they keep saying that they are not getting information that they can use. I would prefer the burden, in some respects, will be shared amongst other communities that have shared interests, but maybe not exactly the same as ourselves. I think what the IAC stands for is support structure to allow climate scientists working on city issues, whether it be applications and designs, whatever. That's what it provides. It provides a network for those people. And then the challenge is for the IOC is to make sure that network has actually got some impact. And I think that's where our next steps should be directed.
What he said. So this is hard to add to. I think this is great. We got a lot of good input from all of you. Thank you so much. And we have our hands full with the limited resources that we have on the board. So we will take all this information, try to come up with a way to form these committees and engage a broader community. Think about how we might make some changes for ICUC 12. If you try again to involve stakeholders. I know it's really tough and it's not what you're actually supposed to be doing at this conference. And maybe get on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. Can you make a video and then sign up for
We
it?
don't have to do everything now.
Maybe if you do the video, it may go viral. That's a good chance, I think.
So that was a great opportunity to share ideas and to know our challenges. So it must happen usually because we need to share ideas often to find ways to solve our problems, like community and like researchers and like who lives in cities and need to change the cities for the future. So thanks for the opportunity. We are from the university. You need to do about the station is a good way to put in practice what we research. So I think I think that our association was to discuss too. So and that's thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin, Natalie, for hosting the panel.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. IAUC and Melissa for organizing. So yeah, just to end, the communication is I think the main thing that we have to overcome for among ourselves, among those who are not part of IAUC, among various stakeholders and the other groups that are also doing similar work as urban planning. And I believe there are platforms now that are readily available and free for us to immediately engage and contribute to the IAUC. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That was almost a closing remark, but still stayed my pleasure to thank everybody for the lively discussion. So that was really great input, and also that at late hours there was such good attendance, which really shows that there's interest in contributing to this community, which makes us really happy. And then secondly, we of course thank all our panelists and give them another warm applause here. And we deliberately did not do this panel at the end of the conference, because we will still have 2 days to go in the conference. So you can speak with us, you can speak with the panelists, but most importantly, you can also speak amongst each other and try to come up with ideas and see how these things could be forwarded and also be organized. So I'm looking forward to the next 2 days in the conference with all of you and the others. And now have a good afternoon and evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining.